If you could tell us a little bit about what exactly you think is happening in China at this point. Now, earlier, of course, we discussed that there were several protests, there were similar banners that were put up, but China took those down, they stifled voices, but now we're seeing that they cannot shut this revolt down, an iconic image that has come forward, just like Tiananmen.
Absolutely, Aarti. You know, Aarti, the frustration level of the normal public in China is now going beyond the saturation point. That is why there are placards of Xi Jinping an idiot. And I personally would say, rightly so, why not? So in the frustration levels with many growing, it's growing completely. And, you know, they're very of snap lockdown, lengthy quarantines, and mass testing campaigns. Now, in fact, very interestingly, a deadly fire which on Thursday in Urumqi, the capital city of northwest China's the Xinjiang region, it had broken out. Now, it has become a fresh catalyst for public anger. Now, people are angry on that as well. And now many people are blaming the lockdown and the mismanagement, the way Chinese government, Xi Jinping especially, has gone about in managing China. It's bound to happen. I mean, people would revolt, people would, you cannot suppress them for too long. They will speak up against the regime over there, and they are doing that. And Chinese army and Chinese government were very smart in initially hiding and lying to the world that this has not happened. They were blaming the US army. They had very smartly blocked the passage to Beijing. But it was open. People were allowed, the infected people with COVID-19 were allowed to travel all over the world and go around infecting people. Now, Shanghai has recently reported 16 symptomatic and 128 asymptomatic COVID cases.
Right.
Now, the symptomatic, fine. What about the asymptomatic? They will be allowed to roam around, but they would be infecting people. So this is the mismanagement which Chinese government has done, and the people are rightly protesting about it. And I see the protests going further. Aarti, is going to become a real mad protest, I would say.
Right. I'm also being joined by former diplomat Ambassador Suresh Kumar Goyal. Ambassador Goyal, now we've put out the two images, the iconic image of Tiananmen from 1989 and the image now from Fujian in 2022. Does this image also represent the sort of major issue that was plaguing China at that point? Of course, sprouting out of dissent again in Tiananmen, the sort of takeover of the CCP, the sort of control that the army and the control that CCP was having on the people. And again here, in terms of COVID, in terms of lockdown, in terms of the so-called zero COVID officers who are again doing the exact same thing that happened earlier. And do you think this image then represents that?
Aarti, first of all, I think we need to be careful and we need to be discriminating when we compare the images from 1989 and now. I think the comparison with Tiananmen and today really ends basically just with the fact that yes, there are protests, but what are protests about? And that is when the real situation of today begins, which is very, very different from 1989. 1989, there was a dissent against the Communist Party simply because there was a section of people benefiting from the economic reforms, but the academic section, the intellectuals, they were not. And it was their protest against the Communist Party because they were not benefiting from the reforms and the bit of a change. Today, what is happening is that the protest is against the zero COVID policy, not against the Communist Party. And that is where the real situation emerges. I don't think that this is going to translate in the long run into any particular dissent, any particular against the Communist Party as such. That is the point number one. Point number two, there is one significant thing which we must observe, that the universities have become involved in the protest, both Fujian and Tsinghua. Now, Tsinghua in Beijing is a very elite institution where most of the Chinese leaders have had their education in technological areas and now they are in commanding positions. Therefore, there is a very strong link between the government of China or the Communist Party and Tsinghua University. If you recall that even in 1989, when the protests began, Tsinghua and Beijing universities, they were very intricately linked to the protest. Fujian is basically the area from which many of the expatriate Chinese have gone to the other countries. Fujian has played a strong role also in the Communist Party movement. It is geographically close to Hong Kong. Fujian University also has very strong and very influential think tanks. I don't think Fujian will do anything which is going to antagonize the Communist Party of China. And therefore, while the professor's images have been shown in terms of protecting the two students, we need to watch further as to what it leads to. My own view is that the zero COVID policy is very restrictive, very, very anti-people. And people, if you listen to the Chinese slogan, I understand what they were saying. I speak the language sometimes. They were basically calling for lifting the restrictions because they are not able to leave the houses, make their running, and therefore they can't eat. There is no food to eat. That is what it is all about. Xi Jinping in the past had played in the case of the Beijing's protests in Henan province in August, in the case of Shanghai protests, Xi Jinping has played with some measure of both a tough decision of using police, etc., to control the riot, and giving little relaxation on those COVID policies, restrictions, so that people are able to move out and people do feel that yes, their demands have been heard too. So we need to wait for a few days to see how it plays out. My own sense is that it is still a bit too early to read a very major and significant development in the history of China.
Right, so let me also rope in Wing Commander Bakshi on this point. Wing Commander Bakshi, talking in length, of course, of the dissent that is being stifled here in China, in several of these cities in China, where not only zero COVID policy that is being invoked for the protest, but also several other issues that are brought forward. Xinjiang is being talked about. There is support being shown for Uyghurs. There is anti-CCP posters that are being put out, and also a resignation of Xi Jinping that is being sought. Do you think this Beijing revolt is not a fleeting moment, but something that would really affect China in the coming days?
Thank you. Absolutely correct. You are saying Beijing is facing multiple problems. You see, there are a lot of political problems which are masked under the COVID protest, which will come. And in a previous talk, I was mentioning about Uyghur to you. That thing is going to rise. And then Xinjiang province always was anti-establishment. They were telling openly that Chinese people go. And the most important thing is that the symbolic photograph which has come, two professors standing in front of the military police of China, reminding of the Tiananmen Square with a man standing in front of a tank. Now that sort of an oppression is the word is being conveyed that people's aspirations are being gunned down and through tanks, forces, police, etc. This does not augur well for Xi Jinping because Xi Jinping does not understand that yes, he's trying to bringing a lot of economic reforms. He's trying to do everything. A lot of steps have been taken, but the amount of oppression of the mind of the people which is taking place because they are all exposed to the other countries, especially when the Qatar picture comes where the faceless millions of fans, thousands of fans are without masks. And he says, you are imposing it. It is just a normal flu. Why are you making such important, imposing such restrictions? This does not augur well. And that is what Xi Jinping is not trying to understand. And other problems which China is facing are already also cropping up under this mask of COVID. So this is a very difficult period for Xi Jinping. He did not realize that this is going to happen. And other countries are now taking advantage of it. And very soon you will see countries like Canada and all other countries already have a lot of arguments with Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping is going to face problems on this.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.